Happy Valentine's Day to all of you on this very special date. I'm reminded of an event organized many Valentine's Days ago called Big Data Date Night. My friends from SciSense will surely remember this. We had about 360 folks join us at the Microsoft Silicon Valley Center to listen to companies like Netflix and SurveyMonkey explain why at the time when it comes to data, the billion is the new million. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about how the world of data evolved since then, as well as going to cover the habits of successful data scientists, the value of road-tested architecture, and something called the DDP. Welcome to the top 5 data, AI, and analytics post of the week. This is the 78th edition of the Data-Driven Carcast, the weekend update where I review, highlight, and recap for you what's hot and what's not in the world of data. And if you like this, make sure to comment, like, share, use, and abuse this content. And also, as you know by now, if you click on the link down below, that will take you to my blog, and scroll down all the way to the bottom of the blog, you will get a nice slide deck that assembles all the references, the links, and the resources I'm going to refer to in the next few minutes, so I can make sure that you go out, read them, and also share them with your friends to make them as smart as you are. So you heard me say DDP earlier, and you're probably wondering, what am I referring to here? Well, over the last few weeks, I've shared a lot of data architecture information and examples with you from McKinsey and Andreessen Horowitz in order to help you and your team find blueprints to modernize your data stack. And we found some big gaps because there's research that shows that even though 70% of financial institutions, for instance, say that they have a modern data architecture roadmap, almost 50% of them have disparate data models, and the majority of them have integrated less than 25% of their critical data in the target architecture. So it's a big problem. There's not a ton of practices for modernizing the data architecture and winning with it. So when we find resources like that, we want to share them so we can accelerate the path of the community to get there. And this week, the people we have to thank are the folks at the Boston Consulting Group, because they have come up with a very dense, very deep research piece on how organizations have modernized their data stack and have been able to deliver twice the value in half the time and cost. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, which is, what does the BCG know about this topic? Well, they actually know quite a lot about this topic. In this piece, they make a point to explain that this DDP process or platform is based on successful customer examples. So it's not theory, it's actually a road-tested architecture blueprint that hopefully you can learn from and you can take to your team. So if you're in the US and tomorrow is a day off for you because it's President's Day, I highly, highly recommend that you read this article, print it, share it with your team, forward it. So it's a free resource. Hopefully it'll help you. And for those that don't have time to do it, I'm going to break down for you here at least the most important pieces, because I think there's really a lot there. So first of all, let's start with the basic, which is, what is DDP? Well, it simply stands for Data and Digital Platforms. And so there's core principles for the DDP, and there's 7 of them, but I'm not going to be able to break down all of them. I'm actually going to isolate maybe 3 of them. The first principle to talk about is this idea of separation of data from transactional systems. So we've talked about this in the past, this idea that you take data out of your transactional systems, your CRMs and your ERP, your monolithic systems, if you will. And the reason for that is, first, if you're going to do an analytics against it, you want to reduce stress against those systems. That's really important, especially when you put a lot of users, a lot of applications in front of those systems. And then second, you also want to put the data somewhere centralized so you can now mix and match with other data sets, external data sets, internal data sets, what have you, because the answer is never going to come from one application, from data from one application. So it's important that you have the separation of data from core transactional systems. That's principle 1. The second principle is an important one as well, which is this creation of modular interfaces between systems using APIs. So here again, we've talked about this in the past. This is the idea of building a data architecture, thinking it's part of an open ecosystem that can work with your services, your partners' services, your customer services, and so forth. And so it's really important that you think about open and open to other systems, and also using services to talk across these systems. Now, they also talk about the adoption of cloud infrastructure, leveraging open source system like I just talked about, combining internal and external data. But I think the most important principle probably is the seventh in that list. So when you look at the list, look at the seventh. The seventh is about providing data as a service to an omni-channel smart business layer. So that's a mouthful here. But what they mean here, it's going to require probably a lot of work if you think about it, right? Because you're talking about data as a service to an omni-channel smart business layer. Here, you think about accessing data from just about anything. Your BI tools, maybe that are integrated, customer applications, other services. So here the challenge is, how can you be integrated enough to have all of that, but how can you be open enough to have enough capabilities to contribute to this digital and data platform? Huge shout out to Carolee, Antoine, Lucas, Aziz, and the two Marks at the BCG for the work here. It's a tremendous piece, probably one of the best that I've seen, and I hope that my community, when they hear me talk about it, they'll reach out to you, because it's really the result of a lot of great work here, and so I really like this piece. So that's for our DDP piece. Of course, this week you saw me share a lot of content on data science. We had Stat Bugsley, who wrote about the difference between data science and business intelligence. This is always a very controversial, complicated topic to argue about, so let him know what you think. He came up with a Venn diagram and so forth. It's really hard to be 100% accurate on this one, but take a look. Hopefully it'll help you. If you have additional ideas, let him know. Harsh also wrote about the 8 habits of successful data scientists. I suggested to the community that they give him an additional 2, so hopefully he can write a top 10 soon. But I think that the biggest news this week when it comes to data science came from LinkedIn. And this information that the data scientist is no longer the sexiest job on earth. Now that's according to LinkedIn's 2020 Emerging Job Report. And it shows that the #1 and fastest growing job in our space is, in fact, wait for it, it's not the data scientist, it's not the data engineer, it's the AI specialist. So you're probably thinking, now what does that mean to data scientists? Well, they're still extremely relevant according to this research. They are #3 in the list, and their hiring growth has gone actually quite high, 37% over the last few years. Now, this is about half the growth of the AI specialist, 74% over the last 4 years. So it's definitely a role that you're going to want to pay attention to if you're a CIO or if yourself have a data scientist. Now, don't go out to LinkedIn and update your profile. You're going to want to take a look at the interactive application that the folks at LinkedIn have built, where they allow you to take a look at the various job descriptions, the skills, the degrees required, and the salary expectations. As it turns out, an AI specialist can make up to 37%, I think, 40% more than a data scientist. So you're going to want to understand the difference between these two jobs if you want to become one and if you want to hire some of those. So I'm going to ping here in this video my friends DJ Patil and Tom Davenport, who wrote the original piece on the data scientists and why it was so sexy, and we'll see hopefully what their reaction is to this new data. All right, well, that's it for this week. There's a lot here. Thanks again for your engagement. The comments, the direct messages mean a lot to me, and they help me do a better job for you every week. This is the 78th week, consecutive week that we're doing this, so we're definitely learning a ton from each other. Stay engaged, be data-driven, and I will talk to you next week.